All right. Um, so we will start. Hello and welcome. Thank you for logging on and attending today's virtual program. My name is Matt Schumann. I am on the programming team here at Cary Library. I don't know why I had to look at the note because I should know that I do that. Before we begin, please let me know if there are any technical issues that I can try to resolve. You can send those in the chat. Questions can be asked through the Q&A button and will be addressed at the end. This program is also made possible by the generous donors to the Cary Library Foundation. I'd like to now introduce our host. You know her so well, probably from living in town, or at least if you've been watching our weekly gardening series. She is the past president of the Lexington Field and Garden Club and author of many books. She's helped curate this series, bringing many experts from a variety of gardening subsets to the library. So please welcome Ashley Rooney.
Hi there, everybody. And boy, do I have an expert today for you, Donna Moultrup. She's a relatively new member of the Lexington Field and Garden Club. Took me a while to persuade her to join, but she knows gardening and she knows horticulture, and she has made such an impact on the club and on the Lexington Community Center. If you can go look at those raised gardens, you will see them, and she did those in the back. We'll talk about those later in the year. But today we're going to talk about composting and rainwater collection. Using natural resources responsibly helps us to ensure the reliability of our food supply and therefore our livelihoods. We're talking here, first we're going to talk about composting, which is an environmental practice that helps grow new life, trees, plants, and food. It's also an energy saver. Compost, which is organic material, can be added to soil to help plants grow. It can include uneaten food scraps, inedible portions of food like banana peels or eggshells, and yard trimmings, and newspaper, making it a great way to reduce waste. To develop compost, the EPA has suggested following some basics. Just remember brown, green, and water. Yes, that's the contents of my composting can. And you see the newspaper, and you see the brown, and you see some vegetables underneath there. A combination of these elements will help you make effective compost, which will really grow your garden. Brown, materials such as dead leaves, cardboard, newspaper, should be shredded according to the books. I don't, it doesn't seem to matter. Greens, materials such as grass clippings, vegetable waste, fruit scraps, and coffee grounds. And water to ensure consistent moisture of the compost. The EPA goes on to advise your compost pile should have an equal amount of browns to greens. The brown materials provide carbon for your compost, the green materials provide nitrogen, and the water provides moisture to help break down the organic matter. Not only does making compost reduce food waste, but it also averts the need for fertilizers, which translates into energy and resource conservation. Now we're going to watch Donna's video on compost and have some composting questions.
1 second, sorry, it just crashed. Here we go.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about composting, home composting. And this is, again, a very old composter, but it's a typical size and shape. They have some now that you can roll, and so you can actually turn it. I don't turn mine because it's kind of small, and also things like snakes live in here, and I really don't want to kill those. And I really only have 1 season worth of things anyway to put in it. So I usually just empty mine in the spring into the garden, and then you're going to want to have some brown, what they call brown. You can use newspaper, you can use leaves, and if you tear those up with a lawnmower and put them in a leaf bin like thing, then you can put your vegetables, scraps, and that sort of thing in the compost, and then put some brown on top, and that way it won't smell. Your compost should not smell. Composter typically has a lid with knobs, so that raccoons that are very good with their paws are as good as our hands. They can get into them. They don't get into this one, and so you have a lid, And some of them these days have a few holes in the top so that you get some rainwater in there. Sometimes with this one I do have to add a little bit of water. Typically they have 1 or 2 doors on the side, and at the beginning of the spring, I go in and dig out my compost, which is pretty good. I don't sift it because I don't have a sifter, and in a home composter, a lot of times it's not fine. It's not like the town's compost pile, but it's good enough, and it raises good vegetables. So then I just put it on each of my sections, like that, and then I just put it in a little bit with the top of the soil. The new methods these days are to not dig up your soil too much. Don't turn it over big shovelfuls anymore. Even the farms are trying to not use a tractor to, till it anymore. Now this one here has all been dug in, and it's been planted, and you can't see as much of the compost in this one that's been dug in the top. And this big stuff will continue to compost when it's in the ground, and so it does just fine. A couple things that are important about home composters: you want to put it in the sunniest spot you can in your yard, because you want it to heat up. That's the whole point. Mine gets about 6 hours of sun, which is not optimal, but it's good enough. And you want to be careful with these. Do not equate a home composter with the anaerobic digesting kinds of things, or the stuff that you can put in the black earth bins. They can take a lot more things than a home composter. Banana peels, citrus things. I found out this year that avocado peels, they do not break down. Eggshells do not break down in a home composter. It might do better if it had full sun all day, but it didn't work in mine. And it's trial and error. You can try and put things in, and then if it doesn't work the next year, you just don't put them in. This year I tried to put some stems with roots, and they didn't compost down. And so I'm just pulling them out after I put it on the garden. Oh, one other thing that's important: if it doesn't have a bottom, you can use something like this. This is hardware cloth. You can get it in any hardware store. And you want to put something at the bottom. You want to have a bottom on your composter, because especially in a suburban area, mice and rats can dig under and go in, and they're looking for food. And so you really want to have a bottom on it. And I think that's good. Great.
Sorry, there we go. That's the right one.
No. That's the next one. Not now. We're not doing that yet.
Oh, that's what I had in my script.
Yeah, but that's later for rainwater.
I see.
Okay.
Sorry.
Now we have questions. I was wondering if we have any questions. I have one question I see. Is it possible to have too much compost in your garden? Susan, what I would do is take that question, have your soil analyzed and see what they say. Your soil can get too rich. My soil sometimes has too much phosphorus in it. And I remember in the Victory Garden show, I think Carla mentioned that she had too much nitrogen or something in her soil. So it could be with your compost that you can overdo it at parts. And it's depending what you're using as fertilizer. But definitely get your soil tested if you think it's too much. Otherwise, I would keep using it until the plants sort of say, enough, baby. All right, go get tested again. My composter, the pictures, I have a sunnier composter than Donna's. So yes, my eggshells disappear, my avocado peels disappear, my roots disappear. A lot of it just disappears. I have almost the exact same composting machine, though I have the holes in the top so it gets moist on its own, so I don't have to worry about that. And I use it maybe by the dead of January, everything's frozen and it's too full and I can't put anything in it for a while. But then come March, I'm using it again and it keeps on going. And those coffee grounds and eggshells, they do nice things for your garden. People ask, is it necessary to shed materials for the compost pile? The finer the material that goes into the compost pile, the quicker and more thorough the decomposition. You don't have to shed, as you saw in my compost, I did not shed those newspapers. But I bet if I shedded it, they would disappear even more quickly. So if you chew it up, it would be good. One thing I would not chew up would be oak leaves in your compost, because oak leaves are hard to, they don't really decompose very easily. And Donna, people ask, what do you think about putting in things like poisonous weeds and stuff?
I wouldn't put poisonous weeds in, only because I would be uncertain about whether the poison would be killed. I mean, it's like poison ivy. A poison ivy root that's been laying around can still give you that rash. And so, yeah, I wouldn't put anything poisonous like, garlic mustard. I would never put garlic mustard in a compost.
No, because we can't kill it in a home composter either.
Right.
Garlic mustard has to really go into our trash in plastic bags.
One of the things, Ashley, I wanted to say is one of the things people do is with newspaper is put it down and then put bark mulch on top of it. And so it takes a long time for that paper to break down. So if it's shredded, it will break down easier in your composter for sure.
Why do they put bark mulch on top of it?
Just because you don't want to see the newspapers, but that keeps the bark mulch just sort of sitting there, and the whole thing is much slower to decompose, and it keeps the weeds, newspapers keep the weeds from coming up through it.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. How do you know when compost is finished?
Well, mine's finished in the spring when I need it for the garden.
It doesn't have a choice, huh?
I think if you've got one of those ones that turn, that you can, turn it a lot and it gets a lot of sun. I mean, they say some of them can produce compost in 6 weeks. And I think if it's fine and crumbly and black, then it's done.
Okay, that's a good one. Another question is, how do you compost when you have too many materials that are high in nitrogen, which would be high with the green stuff?
Well, I stopped using grass in mine because, and it was interesting that you mentioned yours was too high in phosphorus and that Carla was having trouble with phosphorus. I don't know where all this phosphorus is coming from, but when I had my soil tested, it was too high in phosphorus, and there was no real fix for that except to stop adding phosphorus. But I don't know how it got there in the first place. But what I thought was, even though I use organic fertilizer for my grass, I thought maybe there was too much phosphorus in the grass, and then I was putting too much grass into the composter. So over the last 2 years, I have not put grass in there. And I don't have too much. I mean, there are only 2 people in my house. And so, I might have two little buckets each week of vegetable matter. And that's all I put in there, and then a layer of the leaves. And so I don't really, my nitrogen level was good when my soil was tested. Just, layering it, a green layer and a brown layer, but relatively thin, like maybe an inch or 2 of each of those is all I have each time. And then I just keep layering it and layering it. And, the top, when I empty it in the spring, the top has not composted, but all the bottom has. And so I take out the bottom 3/4 of it and then let that top just fall down and start again.
Right. My problem would be, I don't have any trees particularly. My leaves come from my neighbors. So I don't have much high carbon materials during the summer. And I have a lot of stuff I put in the compost. I guess we go through a bucket a day. I eat a lot of greens. And, then the stuff coming in from the garden, the rhubarb leaves, say, the this, the that. all those go in, and you get rid of it that way. What I was interested, the Google said I should store high carbon materials. So I should grab somebody's bag of old leaves that I see next time on the sidewalk and take them home so I can put them in my compost. I'm sure they'd be thrilled if I did that.
Well, one of the things is though that I'm very careful about where I get my leaves too, because
Yeah.
for a while I had small trees. Big trees fell down, and I replaced them with smaller trees, so I didn't have any leaves either. So I was getting them from neighbors, but I don't take them from the front, and I definitely don't take the ones that are along the gutter of the street, because you don't know what kind of exhaust and other kinds of things that could be in those. I want really fresh leaves. And the other thing is, one year I didn't get them shredded up, and so they were full leaves, and they really packed down. If you can shred your leaves with a lawnmower, my husband's able to, cut the grass first by shredding everything that he cuts, and then he goes back and sucks it all up. And so then I have the shredded leaves, and they work much better in a composter than just a layer of brown leaves.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, doing it that way. I should emphasize, Donna mentioned it, bones, meat scraps, animal feces, none of that should go in a home composter. There's much too much potential for pest problems. I had a very nice composting system at the Church of Our Redeemer, where I tend to garden there. Unfortunately, one of the mission projects there threw bread into the compost bin, and that brought in rats, and that was the end of my compost. I was very unhappy about that. However, some of these things like banana peels, I should add, banana peels, and I think they're really cheap in the like January, February. They're great for your roses. I just put them right on my roses, let them give it all right there, and my roses bloom and bloom and bloom. And I'm now attributing it to all the banana peels. So they're really good. Coffee grounds are really great for other things, for plants that like acid, as is tea. Yes, we've already mentioned that the compost pile should be placed in the sun as much as you can get it in the sun. One of the lovely things in the winter is if you go up to Hartwell and you can see the compost pile steaming in the cold air. And you know that my compost is not steaming, and I'm sure Donna's isn't either.
I don't think mine ever steams.
No, I've never got it to steam, and I do stir mine. I don't have snakes.
Well, I just had that one, but
that would do me in.
I was telling Ashley, just that one was enough to keep me from ever sticking the thing in and trying to turn it, because this poor little snake, because then he came out the side air hole, and then he couldn't get back in. So finally he ended up getting back in, but I had to open it up and get a shovel and try and get him to get on the shovel and throw him out in order to get him out. So it was not fun, not fun.
Donna and her animal love stories.
One thing I wanted to say too, my composter is pretty far from my house. And so in the wintertime, if the snow is heavy, I just give it up. And so sometimes mine is like from after Thanksgiving to late March. I don't really use it. So this year I tried something that someone else had done, and was take kitty litter boxes, the plastic ones that the kitty litter comes in, and put vegetables in there until it's full and just sort of let them freeze over the winter. Now, that's a fine idea, and I had enough for 4 of those big kitty litter boxes. But what happened was, our winter was thawing and freezing and thawing and freezing. And so I really had 4 buckets of real muck in the spring. I dutifully put them into the compost, and I figured whatever was in there that was good would be good. And, filled it up about a 25% or something. And of course, a lot of it had composted down in the buckets already. So it was on the bottom, and we'll see how the vegetables, they seem to be growing just fine. So
yeah, it probably worked for the vegetables.
It is one way to use the winter vegetable scraps that you have. And so I would probably do it again. It's
okay.
a little messy.
maybe that's the argument about where you place your compost bin. Mine is right across in the driveway, so it gets the heat of the driveway in the summer and the straight sun. It's just 8 feet from my back door. So it's very easy for me to run back and forth, not like yours. We had a second one, which was down near the garden, because I thought, wouldn't it be nice to be able to put all the pea vines and so forth down there? But I found I didn't use it very much. And it wasn't practical to go down there. You certainly didn't go down there in the winter because there was too much snow. Yeah, you know, you got to really think about where you use it. I think the first compost bin, the first picture I showed, I don't know if Matt, if you could pick it up again, was a wooden one, which my stepson made. He was, yes, thank you. He was bored during the pandemic and he had some extra wood and he took his sons and he made this, which probably works just fine. It's all the same, you can see the thing that Donna talked about lifting up so you can get the compost is right there and he has the screen at the bottom. They're easy enough done. They're not that expensive. They're about $75 to $100, I think.
Yeah, and they last forever. I mean, I've had mine for at least 30 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they could last for a long time. Somebody asked, can fruit waste be composted?
Sure.
I do. I compost fruit waste.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's easier to chop up the peels a bit. You know, you got a great big grapefruit peel. If you chop it up, if you want, it makes it a little bit easier to handle.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't put grapefruit in mine because I can't even get an orange peel to compost in mine. I don't have enough sun, but yeah, any fruit thing, and it'll compost down. So
it'll be nice. How can I use compost? This person asks. Compost can be used to enrich the garden, to improve the soil around the trees and the shrubs, as a soil amendment for houseplants, and when screened as part of a seed starting mix or a lawn top dressing. Sometimes in the early spring, I will get compost and spread it on my lawn just to enrich the lawn because I don't do much fertilizer out there anymore, just to keep the lawn, have good soil coming in. And that helps. Are there other questions on that?
There was a question in the chat.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I see it.
Just came in. Can oil or bacon fat be put in home compost?
no.
Did you hear that, Don?
No, yeah, no oils, no oils. And again, that can go into the anaerobic digestion bins, those green bins that you'll see that people have, but not in a home composter.
Yes, because those raccoons are just going to be sitting out there licking their lips and saying, oh, I really want that.
Yeah, well, the oils are in the same category as meat and bones.
Yeah. And it's best not to compost diseased plant materials because of the chance of reinfecting your garden. So if you have tomato blight, for instance, don't stick the tomatoes in there, stuff like that. How do you know when to turn the pile? I just turn it about once every 2 or 3 weeks or stir it, depending how ambitious I feel. Either I'm going to get out there with a shovel or am I going to get a big stick and turn it. I want to keep those materials churning and keeping it around. If my son comes and he's strong, he will take the compost at the bottom and put it on the top so it sits through again and really helps it. That can all help. You stir yours much? You sounded like you didn't because of the snakes.
No, because of the animals, and it's layered nicely, and it's a small square. It's very difficult to really turn it. But I can tell you that supposedly it works much better to turn it so it gets some air in there. Because if it composts down and packs in and the air can't get to it, it's not going to compost as well. So that's one of the problems and why they've come up with these ones that turn.
Yeah, that does help. And you can compost sod, and it should not smell. Compost pile should not smell at all. On the other hand, compost bin, such as the type we're talking about, where you're using food waste, should be in a bin, a holding container. I had a neighbor who did have one that was just with a wire fence around it. That attracted animals again. We're just asking for problems, and we were not happy with her for doing that.
One thing I should say, Ashley, as a person from a health department, sometimes health departments have rules about composting
Oh,
that you should pay attention to. And it's because of the suburban environment and the number of animals that we have in the area. And so in Belmont, I know that we had them under the nuisance regs. Composting was under the nuisance regulations. I really don't know. I haven't checked with Lexington to see whether there's anything on composting. But it was the kind of thing that you had to have an enclosed bin, it had to have a bottom on it, that kind of thing.
that's interesting. There's a new sustainability person in town. And
right, yeah.
they've been talking to me about various things. And that's something they could look into and see what they're doing on that. I had one other thing here. It should not have an odor. The composting process in the average pile, according to my research, takes about 6 to 8 months, though an ideally mixed intended pile may take less than 8 weeks to become compost. 8 weeks is pretty short. I might do that in the real hot summer. In August, my compost really drops, despite how much I'm putting in there. Oh, there's another question here. My neighbor said rats chewed into her compost bin. Besides bread and meats, what else should we avoid? I can't think of anything other than bread and meats. Well, the oily bacon fat would be one she might have been putting in there. Cooked foods you wouldn't do,
Right.
Because that could have picked up other stuff. She should have had the what did you call it? That wire that you put on
hardware cloth.
Hardware cloth at the bottom to stop all rats and so forth.
Yeah, it's possible for them to chew through, although it's usually squirrels that chew through plastic things.
Right.
But yeah, I've never had them chew through the bottom. Now mine's a plastic bottom that's got holes in it, but it's fairly thick. I mean, no, they're not going to be able to chew through that. But a lot of them do come without bottoms, and so you really should get some hardware cloth. But they won't chew through that hardware cloth. It's not chicken wire. You know, chicken wire is different. It's much thinner. It rusts really quickly and breaks. But hardware cloth is solid. It's good.
It's tough. It is tough. Why don't we move on to the rainwater? And people can think about other questions on composting. We can talk about rainwater harvesting, collecting, if I can find my paper here. Matt, can you pull out the, yes, you have it right there, I think. Is that the rainwater?
Yeah, that's the picture. He's got the picture of yours. Is that yours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay. We combine these two because this is both about how to conserve energy. And what we've discovered, I think, with this pandemic is energy and our resources are in great demand here. And what can one do? So how do you collect water, rainwater, and what are the benefits? Whether you have an interest in water conservation or simply want to save some money on your water bill, collecting rainwater for gardening may be the answer. We fill our pools, wash our cars, and water our lawns and gardens with the same water that we drink. But that water has to be chemically treated to make it safe for drinking, which is great for us, but not necessarily great for our plants. Collecting rainwater for gardening can eliminate many of these chemical salts and harmful minerals from your soil. And there's savings for us too, because most home gardeners see a rise in their water bill during the summer gardening months. And certainly it has been tough this last month in July, and usually that only happens in August. And during a drought, many of us have been forced to choose between our garden and our water bill. Rainwater collection can reduce those bills during the rainy months and help offset our costs during the dry ones. So how do you collect rainwater? The simplest method is with rain barrels. This is a homemade rain barrel. Donna's going to show us a real one. Using rain barrels involves no special plumbing. They can be purchased often through food conservation groups, local conservation groups, through our own DPW last year, or you can make your own. Prices range about $75. Here, my husband just took a sturdy garbage can, cut a hole in it for the gutter, and water pours down. We get the overflow in that red bucket, and we fill our little watering buckets and go water all those plants. Now, Donna has a movie on this, a video, not a movie.
One second. Nope, nope, nope.
A short. We're making a short video here so we can show you the parts of a rain barrel, since we can't have it in the actual place when we're talking. So this is a very old rain barrel. It's a 75-gallon. You can get 50-gallon ones. You can get smaller ones. You can get decorative ones. So any garden supply house will have them, like Gardener's Supply. And the DPW has the rain barrels also. So you've got the main barrel. You've got your rain gutter going into the barrel. This one doesn't have any spout or anything. It just goes into the top of the barrel. The ones from the DPW, I believe, have a spout, and so you connect this to the top of it.
Yeah.
This is my screen for mosquitoes. That's really, really important. This is screen on a plastic part here, and so I use bricks to hold it down well to make sure that it's tight and the mosquitoes can't get in. Some of the ones you can get, the DPW one, I think, has a more flexible fabric, and you actually just screw the top over that fabric. So I don't think there's any way mosquitoes can get in that one. So then we have the emptying, and a lot of times they have just a faucet. This one actually has a hose, and it actually has an end that you can hook to a hose. It only takes about 10 minutes to empty the entire thing if you hook it to a hose. However, I've only done that once. And this hose hooks up here, but a lot of them have a faucet down here. It's important that you raise it up. The higher the water is, the faster it flows out. And so this is an 8-inch concrete block, and I have it sitting up on 2 of them. Then you have an overflow pipe, and this particular one has the pipe inside, and so as it overflows inside, it goes into that pipe and then out this side. A lot of them today have just a faucet that comes out the side, and then you hook a hose to it. And so you can connect these together. It doesn't take a few minutes of a good hard rain to fill this. It takes a lot longer to empty it. I have a way that I do it. I fill a 2-gallon watering can, and then I put it into the bucket, and I have just enough time to take that watering can and empty it somewhere in the garden and get back here, and this is full. Put this in the empty thing and take this, and usually use this on the trees since you can't be very careful with the bucket. But I can empty about 35 gallons, half of the barrel, in about a half an hour. And which, you know, it's time consuming, and if you have a large yard and it's very dry, probably you're not going to use your rain barrel. On the other hand, it's important, if you have a rain barrel, that you empty it regularly so that you can take advantage of the good rains that come. Okay, I think that's all we need to talk about, just as far as the parts of a rain barrel go.
Thank you. And now we're gonna have questions on both rain barrels and composting. I feel like we're back in the Little House on the Prairie. How to keep ourselves going with all sorts of things happening in our world. What can we do?
Well, composting in rain barrels can keep you busy. That's for sure.
I know, but don't you feel kind of virtuous in a way? When I pull out the compost out of my barrel and think, oh, this is all going to go in the garden, and then I watch the garden produce all those tomatoes and
Well,
so
that's the beauty of it. And the other thing is, when you throw away a vegetable, if something has gone bad in your refrigerator, you put it in the compost bin, and you don't feel bad about it because it's going to give you good compost later, and then you can grow more vegetables.
So there's no waste. It's a cycle. So I think that's one of the things I like about the compost. Absolutely. Yeah. The other thing about the rain barrel is my plants absolutely like rainwater much better than any water that comes out of our spigot. I don't know what to say about that, but they just
How do you know that?
Better. They just do better. They want the rainwater. I know it because when it rains, they do better. They just get water. You know, I can water them with a hose, but it's not the same. They stay alive, but they sure don't thrive. And I just feel like the rainwater is just so much better. And in the summertime, I use my rainwater, my rain barrel. That water I use on my houseplants too.
Yeah. There's also the thing, the rainwater is soft water, supposedly, and that's better for your plants too. And you're right, plants do shoot up. When you have a rain, bang, they shoot up. Yeah. We have a question here from Laurel. Is it possible to use a rain barrel as a sprinkler system? I don't think so.
Not very well. I can tell you though that my neighbor puts a sump pump in his, and then he can hook it to the hose and he can actually, you know, really spray it. I just don't think the water is going to last that long. I mean, that's one of the things that you realize when you're emptying a rain barrel, because you have a finite amount of water and you know how long it takes you and how little you really do. I mean, that 75 gallons of water does not water a whole lot of my yard. And so, you know, if you put it on a sprinkler, it would be gone in 10 minutes. That's what would happen. So, I mean, it really is good for watering specific things. And potted plants for sure. Yeah, it's good for the garden. You know, if you're doing a small area or some parts of it need to be watered more, if you put in new plants, I mean, all of those things are very good to use it for. The issue really is if we get tons and tons of rain, not only do you have no use for the water, but you really have no use because it's been raining. So then it sits there. And so it's much better. It's much better for us in general to have short rains and short dry periods and have that cycle. And that's better anyway, but that's ideal for the use of a rain barrel. You fill it up, you empty it. You fill it up, you empty it. And some summers are really good like that, and then other summers aren't. I mean, all my rain barrels were empty recently before this last big rain, because I had drained them down to nothing and there was no more rain. So then I had to wait for that big rain, which filled them. And now I'm trying to use it. But we had, I don't know, a few days there where we had multiple rains and the barrel just kept being full and I didn't need any more rainwater outside. So I mean, you have to pay attention to it because you really do have to be thinking about where can I use this water? And, you know, if you have a big yard full of flowers, you can always use it. I mean, they can hardly ever get too much water.
Now that we don't go to the gym, carrying around those heavy rain barrels gives you all that exercise too.
That's exactly right. That 2 gallons of water is very heavy.
Okay, Susan asks, this is the first year I've had a rain barrel. Do I need to bring it in the winter so it doesn't split from freezing?
I take mine all apart, make sure all the components are dry, clean the inside of it, because a lot of the, I don't know what it is, it's not gravel, but it's little rock-like stuff gets in the bottom of it from the shingles on the roof. And so by the time that all drains down into it, you've got a bunch of that. I had a lot of that at the community center when I cleaned out that barrel. It was stuff off of the roof. And so I try and clean mine because you will get a buildup inside if you let it go. So it's not that difficult to spray it with a hose. I have a brush that I brush off some of the stuff. It's almost like barnacles on the inside, you know, when a boat sits in water for a long period of time. And so I clean it all up, dry it all, and then put it away.
It's interesting that you asked. There were different things. My homemade one, we do bring in and clean out and all that. The commercial one that we bought, we empty, Susan, because you don't want it out there frozen solid. Then you are going to have problems. So we empty it, weight it down so it doesn't blow away in the wind. and it just stays out there. Now we have, here you go, it goes right back to what you were saying, Donna, from Francesca. 2 concerns I've had: contamination from asphalt roofs and plastic from the barrel leaching in. Can you please address?
The asphalt roof, I don't really think does anything to the water. As I say, it creates that sediment, but I've never thought that it was doing anything to the water. As far as the plastic, I can't say. I mean, you know, for years we've been thinking about whether plastic leaches into our food when we store it in there. And, you know, a lot of us have moved to glass storage containers for in the refrigerator. As far as cold rainwater, I'm guessing that it's not that big of a problem. I'm not aware of anyone saying it's a problem. That's all I can.
Oh, I haven't heard it either. It's something just to watch out for. You know, you're not drinking this water. We're not talking drinking this water.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I do put it in my bird bath, because I figure if they are fine with it in a puddle out on the street, then they will be fine with me taking the top water, which is clean,
yeah,
and putting it in the bird bath.
Yeah.
It comes out perfectly clear for the most part, except this year when the pollen came in such a flush. The rain barrels were full of the pollen.
Yes, they were.
And that water came out yellow. So now it's clean. Now it's clean.
Well, you haven't had any birds looking at you with the bird bath after you filled it and then knocking.
No, they were fine with it.
Yeah, they were fine. That's good. Any more questions before we wrap up here? Very rarely do you hear much talk about a rain barrel. You know, our summers have changed. Our summers have changed a good deal. They're much hotter than they used to be, and they're a lot longer. And we found over the years, if you're gardening, you're going to use a lot of water, you know, just to keep it going, unless we had a reasonable rain, but we haven't had reasonable rain. This was one way to resolve some of that problem and not spend as much money. And, you know, towns are hurting, so bills are going to go up. So I recommend this in a way of saving yourself some money, being good for your garden. Donna says her garden profits from it, definitely.
Oh, it loves it. And I use it on the trees. I mean, I'll take about 8 to 12 gallons of water, you know, with my system of the 2 containers, and run it to a tree and, you know, give it a good soaking.
Right. Okay. Well, I thank you all for being with us. Next week, I believe, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, we are doing difficult challenges in the garden.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so if you want to send any problem garden images, you can send them to carryprograms@minlib.net.
Right. I have a bunch of challenges already, and so I'm looking forward to doing that. See what it is, see what we can come up with. And that will be with Karen Joyson, another member of the Garden Club, who knows a good deal about plants. Let me thank Donna Moultrup for being with us today. She certainly is good on this. If you have any further questions, feel free to write us through the library. We're more than happy to address your concerns, or to research your concerns if we don't know the answer, see what we can do, okay?